At the same token, right, we're about this diploma mill, getting them out of the school, but we're not responsible for how they got in this particular position, right? And so, like I said, the question is twofold. Where do our students fall behind? When is it, right? Because naturally, like, kids are inquisitive. I can't get my son to stop asking questions, right? He asks questions, he loves to read, that sort of thing. So when do they get left behind? Like, is it a certain grade? Is it like, when does that happen?
Well, I'm curious to hear from Sandy because I know she has the babies.
Right? Well, what I try to do, is prepare them as best for school. But then I've had students that by the time they've left us, graduated, they've been excelling, they were reading at like a higher level, doing work. And by the time they came to elementary school, I had a student came back. I'm like, he's in process of possibly getting left back. And I'm like, but you were here and you were way ahead. And you went to school and now you're behind. So you're further back than where I left you at. So it's like, what happened? Like, what, failed? Like, is it, because when we work with the kids, we work one-on-one and we try to do stuff to push them, to prepare them for elementary school. And when they get there, it's like, depending on the teacher, some teachers don't push like we do and don't necessarily care, or they don't have the time to, because their classrooms are filled with so many different students that they don't have to have that opportunity to have that one-on-one time to push that student. And that's what some children need, because not everybody learns the same, and some need that extra push. So it's a possibility that it could be elementary school for some students and maybe junior high school. I don't think there's a certain grade. It's a aspect of how well they're being pushed, if they need to be pushed, because some students don't need to. They just naturally excel and very inquisitive and curious and will find a way to learn and push themselves. But some students need that push.
Yeah, I don't think it's a particular grade that you can pinpoint. I've had students come to me, well, when I taught ninth grade, parents would say, my child always got 90s. How is it that they're only getting 65s and 70s here? And I'm like, it's a different ball game in high school. Right. And so I don't think it depends on the school that the child goes to. It depends on what happens at home. I think sometimes we exclude the child's family life from the conversation when it needs to be included, because a child that's living in a shelter, or there's 7 of them living in a 1-bedroom apartment. I mean, they're not gonna be at the top of their game because they have so many other things that are working against them. And so I don't think we can pick one area, but I know that people do say that students lose interest in middle school, because that's like they're going through puberty. It's like they want to be they want to be grown. They want to talk back. They want to do all these different things. But I think it's based on a school. If a school is lacking resources, or they don't have good leadership, because it always starts with the leader, and they're not being pushed. Teachers aren't being required to have high expectations for students. And I also think it deals with who's in front of the child, because from my experience, some teachers will say, well, they're so low level, they can't do this, they can't do that. It's not that they can't do it, they've never been required to do it. And so raise your expectations, and then students will meet those expectations. But if your bar is so low, then how are they going to ever catch up, and how are they going to ever be successful if your expectations are so low? So there's so many different factors. I don't think it's one particular grade. It's depending on each child individually.
I think you could pinpoint a point in their life where this might be, where students go from, my child, or a parent can go from, I saw my child doing really well, to my child struggling. And I think that somewhere between after 3rd grade and middle school. And I say that because I think that up to the point where students have to take the 3rd grade test, I think that for some and many parents, they're a little bit more involved, right? And they're worried. And they're like, oh my God, the 3rd grade test. And everybody's just talking about the 3rd grade test.
Exactly.
And everybody's like, I have to make sure they study because the 3rd grade test. And the teachers are like, oh my God, the 3rd grade test. Even if in 1st grade the teacher didn't pay you any attention, the teacher in 3rd grade everybody's gonna be crucial. All over you in 3rd grade. True. And I think that what ends up happening is that somewhere after the importance of the third grade test and fourth grade test happen, and you students are going from like fifth grade to sixth, seventh, eighth, is where, because internally the student is going through crazy puberty stuff.
Okay.
But also parents, I think, are like, wait, but you're not a baby anymore. Because for some parents, you're not a baby anymore once you're like 12. Just confusing to me.
10.
And so they may pay attention less. And then the teachers or the group of people who are so concerned about you passing the third grade test and a fourth grade test are less concerned about that. Because at some point, you're going to go on to the next grade regardless. The reality is that if you do not pass the third grade test, you are still going to go to fourth grade. So it's kind of like,
So
I get it. You don't want to leave the students back. And I'm not saying a kid should be left back. But if I'm going to continue to push the person along and not say, wait, I need to do something differently to help this student, then what ends up happening is a cycle of, I know they're not ready, but they're going to go on anyway. So it's okay that they don't do as well. I know they're not ready. They're going to still go on. And they get to high school and you're like, how come you can't read?
Exactly.